Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Thursday, July 12th edition of Kubernetes community meeting. My name is Paris. I work at Google. I do community-related stuff, and I also co-chair contributor experience and do some sub-projects under contributor experience as well. Thanks to everyone for joining us today. We do have a jam-packed agenda. However, we do have some modifications. I will guide everybody through those. First things first, we usually have a demo. Unfortunately, our demo today was stuck in a metal tube and they could not join us at the last minute, unfortunately. So we're actually going to go ahead and skip the demo this week, and we hope to see them sometime in the future. The next up is Tim Pepper, the release lead for 112. Tim, are you on? Tim might not be on yet.
I just pinged him on Slack, so we'll see.
Okay, oh, there he is. I see him joining now. Hey, Tim. Tim?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Since I'm just joining, I'm not sure if you're already rolling. And
yeah, we are already rolling. Yeah, unfortunately, we did not have a demo today, so you are up first.
Okay. Well, 1.12 release. Let's start video and wave at everybody. Hi. I will be the 112 or am the 112 release lead, and we'll be giving updates during the cycle in the community, meeting regularly and sending out emails as well. But cycle's underway. We have our team listed there in the notes along with a link to the schedule. Main thing going on right now is feature collection. So we'll be reaching out to SIGs. It's already been by a couple times on KDev. There's a link also to the spreadsheet where current feature work is being noted. Stephen Augustus, our features lead, will be reaching out to folks as well as his shadows in the role and myself, and probably also Aish Sundar, my shadow. Some key dates just to call out. Obviously, we've got the link to the full schedule there, and these things are on the community calendar now as well. But feature freeze is at the end of the month of July, the current month, and code slush and code freeze will be end of August and beginning of September respectively. And following along with what happened in 1.11 with the shortening of those periods, we will continue that here in 1.12 because it seemed like it worked reasonably well. But that really depends on us having a clean CI signal. So the release team pushed aggressively in the 1.11 cycle and will continue to do that here in 1.12 to ensure that there's solid attention to keeping the test signal green. If for some reason we have issues with that, not necessarily foreseen, but if it does, we'll have to make a call sometime probably in early August to step that up again and really emphasize to different SIGs if we're having issues that this be rectified. And if it wasn't, we might have to pull the code slush and code freeze back and elongate them just so we have plenty of time to stabilize ahead of the release. But not foreseeing that, but just mentioning it. And we will, as a team, work aggressively to communicate that ahead of time and really, I would say, expect that not to be the outcome. But this is still somewhat a new change to go with the shorter cycle there on the code freeze. So really want to highlight that. And related to that, we're asking that SIGs give a little bit more attention earlier to discussing what could or should be blocking test cases and test additions for the 1.12 release. And then the docs folks have found that documentation for new features often is a trailing thing, and they're really hoping that we might be able to get at least rough drafts earlier on documentation in the cycle. So please give some consideration when you're doing your feature work definitions to allot some time to starting to draft the documentation and not having those come just at the very last moment. And similar for test cases. We want to at least know that those are coming, be planning their insertion in a timely way, and ideally having them come already green on the feature. And I think that's the main stuff to communicate on 1.12.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing more of you here in the next couple of weeks, and folks will be hearing from you in multiple platforms in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for volunteering for the role as well. Do we have Anirudh on for 1.11.1?
Yeah. Hey, Paris.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, nice to see you. Hey.
Yeah, you too. So on 1.11.1, I sent out an email to Kubernetes dev, announced the planned cut date is Monday, July 16th, and we're going to freeze the branch end of day today. So I've been getting all the last minute cherry picks in. A bunch of them still need some action. We're tracking them actively. I think there's 3 changes which are marked action required right now. 2 of them are part of the email that I sent out, and then 1 more got added. So I'll probably have an update email as well. But yeah, things are looking good. There was some issue with PRs merging because of COPS test this morning that Liggett brought up. So we need to follow up on that and make sure things merge by the end of the day. But otherwise, tests look good. Branch looks green, mostly. Yeah.
All right, green is good. All right, next we are filling in this week with the cap of the week. And Janet, are you on?
Yes, I'm on.
All right, great. So this is a new segment for us. We have been reviewing CAPs, as CAPs are semi-new to the project as well. And this gives us a good chance to highlight some of the work that's coming through from SIGs. So Janet, take it away.
Okay. So I opened, can everyone see my screen?
Good to go.
Oh, so I opened a CAP for garbage collection, and it's mainly for cleaning up the frequently created and short-lived objects. So currently, the existing garbage collector doesn't allow you to clean up those resources that doesn't have any owners. For example, when a pod terminates or when a job completes, when the resource finishes, we don't have a way to garbage collect them. And also for a resource like config maps and secrets or any other CRDs that is used or referenced by other resources. Some people, we have seen some pattern that people don't update those. They just create new ones and update the references in the other resources like deployments. So in order to clean up those resources, I wrote this CAP to propose to introduce a TTL mechanism to garbage collector, and also to allow users to specify that they want to clean up some resources after they finish or after they are not used by other resources. And so if you have comments on this CAP, feel free to go to this link and take a look at the CAP. And also, I'm going to discuss this in the next SIG API machinery meeting, which is next Wednesday on 1 p.m. Oh, 10 a.m.
Yes.
10 a.m. PST. And if you are interested, I'll give a full presentation for this proposal.
It's 11 actually.
Oh, 11.
11 PST.
11. And that's it.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Janet? We do have some time, so if anybody has any questions or discussion that they want to add, feel free. Last call. Janet will also be around in chat, so if you have any questions, feel free to ping chat. And we will move on to the SIG portion of the day. First up, we have API machinery. David, I did see you on. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. David Eads, co-lead for SIG API machinery. Figured I'd talk about what we delivered in 1.11 and what we're planning to do in 1.12. In 1.11, there were some developer-facing improvements that we made for the dynamic client. I know that some people writing operators and other controllers make use of it. We made it significantly simpler to use and wired it better with the machinery that we have. We recommend that you switch to using it. We've left the legacy client in place, but it won't be there forever. So switch, give feedback, let us know. The null CRD conversion made it in, and I want to be clear about what this is and isn't. So this gives you the ability to promote a custom resource definition from one version to another, but without any accompanying API changes with it. So this means that it gets served at the new endpoint. Say you went from alpha 1 to beta 1. It'll be served at the beta endpoint, but you won't be able to do any data transformation. You won't be able to have different schemas associated with it, and you won't be able to have, you won't be able to differentiate your data formats. So it is useful, but it is limited, and be aware of those limitations. There is still work going on server-side apply. It's active. There is still a feature branch. And a lot of work was done there in 1.11. There are some designs out if you want to review them. Then also in 1.11, we did work for making the controller manager start from a config. It takes a lot of base work to make that happen. So there have been a lot of developer-y things happening there. In 1.12, we are actually moving a piece of the apply work out from the feature branch into master. The dry run, Appalese has been working on getting it into master. I think the API changes were LGTM yesterday or today, and it'll be properly feature gated, but it's been a much asked for feature that'll be really nice. For custom resource definitions, we are going to be working on the path to more advanced conversion. And that's going to require us to get pruning in. I expect we'll be able to do that. That's removing extra data items. Field defaulting, which is extremely common. There was a design for it long ago where we are actively working on that. And then we're going to be reviewing designs starting next week for more advanced versioning. Given how tight we are, I don't know that we expect to have an implementation, but design should be moving forward, and that's a good thing. The feature branch work for server-side apply is going to continue. The prereq work and the controller manager for developers out there who see stuff move around, there is an end goal. We are working towards running from config. Just it's taking a long time to get from here to there. And then one final thing, generic initializers. They came in as alpha a little bit before webhooks, admission webhooks came in. But we are looking at it. It looks like a very similar feature. And we are considering removing generic initializers in the future. Before we do that, we're still going to work on what we need to do for initializing namespaces. But if you are a user of generic initializers and think you have a strong use case that cannot be satisfied with admission, please come to the API machinery meeting and let us know so that we don't take away a feature you like. That's it for me. Let me find the stop sharing button.
Thanks, David. I don't think no one likes a feature taken away, so listen to David. All right. And then our next crew is Steve with testing, and I know Steve's on as well. Steve, you want to take it from here?
Sure thing. Let me share my screen.
Oh, I'll ask API Machinery to put a link to the slides for the notes, please.
All right, I hear you.
Cool. Yeah, so some updates from SIG testing over the last couple months. one of the big things that we were able to do is implement caches, and so those both helped in performance gains for test runs, and also a lot more for our internal infrastructure. We developed a couple different workflows that are declarative and config driven to administer GitHub organizations and projects and keep that a little bit more transparent. We improved a couple of UX items with the robot and how people interact with it. We exposed a couple simpler ways to write jobs for test authors. We're continuing to mature the workflows for merging using Tide. We have now an aggregated place to place your federated conformance test results, and we are seeing adoption of our infrastructure by communities that are both related to Kubernetes and at large. One of the caches that we implemented was a GitHub caching layer. Clicking through here will take us to some metrics that we have from it, but it's reducing our API token rates by about 1,500 an hour, which lets us do a lot more with the token rates that we have from GitHub. We also implemented a caching layer for Bazel build artifacts. And so this graph that we're looking at the bottom is the test time duration in minutes for the Bazel build test. And you can see the quite obvious drop here in test runtime. And we've seen that caching layer continue to be performant since then. We are continuing to make the interaction with the robot a little bit nicer as GitHub adds new features to their web UI. So one of the big ones is you can LGTM, you can approve from a review comment now. It doesn't need to be a standalone comment as it used to be. Also, we are finalizing and rolling out a feature so that if you change a owner's file in your pull request, the robots will validate that the changed file is valid. Today, if you change it and someone doesn't notice that perhaps your format is incorrect, it'll start cascading some failures on the infrastructure side of things. There are a couple tools that are being developed and rolling out that will aim to make organization administration easier. So there's this tool, Parabolos. The point here is to automate the entire management of the organization. So all the teams inside of it, who's assigned to what team, different ACL assignments in GitHub for those teams. And we'd like for that process, that configuration to be clearly visible. It's going to be checked into a public repo, and changes to it are going to be transparent. Right now, a lot of this stuff is sort of behind the scenes. And so in order to make that a little bit clearer for the org, this tool will help us. We also rolled out automatic branch protection for all the repos. This is setting required status context. It's making sure that only a certain amount of people or robots can merge to different branches. Also, as a note, the rollout of this feature, we tried to exemplify the best practices for how we're going to roll out community-facing changes in the future. So we had a couple different repos where this was sort of tested against, and we gave a heads up a couple of different times, and hopefully everybody was well aware of this feature before it was actually rolled out on May 30th. And so we're hoping that different rollouts will sort of follow that pattern as well in the future. One of the interesting ways that we can configure jobs now is, as a job author, if you have a test script that you want to run and an image, those are the two smallest pieces of information we need. And so there's a lot less information that you need to understand about the test infrastructure right at a job. We're pretty excited about this. Onboarding to the larger test infra stack will be a lot easier with this feature. We continue to mature the next generation merge automation. So right now, the Tide tool, which is our new merge tool, is merging for pretty much every single repo in the Kubernetes org except for Kubernetes proper. And we aim in the 112 cycle to get Kubernetes proper to be merged with that tool as well. Coming with that tool is a pull request status page. And so this status page will show you sort of the difference between where your PR is today and what it needs to have for things to merge. So if we're looking at this pull request in this image, you'll notice that there's a required label that's missing, and that's the LGTM label. And in order to merge, you're going to need to resolve those labels. If we quickly go to this page, the nice thing about the page is it's driven by a GitHub search. And this GitHub search looks pretty much anything like any other GitHub search that you can do in the web UI. So for instance, if I'm a release lead and I'm looking for the merge status of different pull requests that are going to be trying to target 112, I can go ahead and just change that. As you see today, Kubernetes is not using this merge tool, so the merge requirements are unknown. But in the future, when it's rolled out, you'll be able to monitor anything like this and sort of look at the aggregate status for a bunch of different pull requests like that. Cool. We also now have a test grid dashboard where CNCF conformance test results can be published. There's a simple process in an uploader tool that helps you sort of add yours to there. So you can see here, there's a bunch of different GCD releases that are showing their conformance test results. And we've onboarded OpenStack as well into this process in this cycle. As I noted before, one of the exciting things for us is that we're actually seeing this infrastructure start to get adopted by a bunch of different organizations. So, that we know of, we have about 5 deployments of the infrastructure that are pretty active in the community, and we're excited to continue developing that and making sure that we have solutions that work for Kubernetes, but also at large. Some of the work that we're aiming for 112. We'd like to have better onboarding documentation, both for job authors and as well for administrators of clusters. We have a couple outstanding tech debt items that block some further adoption. And when we clean those up, we also hope to sync with SIG API machinery to make better use of their generators. We are hoping to work on a more powerful log viewer. So recently, scalability pre-submits were made blocking, and so hopefully, a more powerful viewer will help us have job result pages that show more fine-tailored views. So, for instance, the scalability job could show you some graphs instead of potentially what you see today. We'd like to make the configuration story a little bit easier for everyone, and to make ownership of jobs a little bit easier to understand. We're working on a framework to make more robot interactions easier to write. So with the extra tokens that we have, we can think of more workflows that we can enable that way. And our testing subproject is hoping to finalize on an expressive API for provisioning clusters so that end-to-end tests are running against clusters that look similar. And that's all I have.
What an update. Thanks, Steve. That was testing clearly has been up to a lot of work. All right, let's move on to our next thing.
Can I ask a question?
Oh yeah, sure, of course, Josh, shoot.
For the sort of the Tide-based PR status page.
Yep.
What would it take to record archival snapshots of status? That is like every day, say, record aggregates of this is how many PRs are stuck on these particular labels / issues.
I'm not sure that the page supports that today, but I think that wouldn't be too hard. We're just sort of dumping the difference in state and computing that.
Which of the testing meetings should I attend to talk about that?
We have a weekly SIG testing meeting that's on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You drop by there. I'm trying to press the stop share button, by the way, Paris, and I don't think it's working. So
I've got you. Hold on one sec.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me make sure I do. I've never actually killed anyone. So yes, continue. All right. Any other questions for Steve before we go to the next? We do have some time, so feel free to ask a question. Joe actually had a question in chat too about like an end user testing guide, Steve. I'm not too sure if you saw that. I just responded that it's been discussed, but work has not started yet. Just more documentation along the lines of what you were talking about for future.
Yeah, so I think one of our focuses was definitely how to onboard tests into the testing infrastructure, but a document that would help actually write tests and what test content should exist. Also super useful. I think it's on our roadmap.
All right. Anyone else? Last call for Steve before we go into contributor experience. All right. So next up is me with contributor experience update. Elsie Phillips and I both co-chair this SIG, and we do have some team leads, or excuse me, technical leads that really work with testing closely. You'll see a lot of overlap with testing and contributor experience. And we are two groups that do work closely together to make sure that the contributor has a smooth ride on all of our systems. All right, and the links to the slides are in the agenda. This deck is jam-packed with links, whether that's to docs or issues or what have you. So as I go, feel free to comment on any of the issues now or whenever. So our first sub-project that I'm going to cover some highlights and things that we're working on is the contributor guide and contributor documentation. Next is a community management section of our duties, which includes things like events and communication. Then, of course, mentoring, DevStats, and if folks do not know what DevStats is, devstats.kates.cncf.io. It's a great dashboard where you can measure the health and velocity of the project and pretty much anything. Elsie actually leads that up, and Josh does a lot with data validation along with Lucas from CNCF. So it's a really great project that I'll also mention at the end. And then also a GitHub management sub-project, which is now proposed. I actually did not link that clearly because I see my note there. So I'll add that link. Christoph actually just proposed that recently, and we'll check that out too. So first things first, the contributor guide documentation. The issue that we had for umbrella issue is now officially closed. Of course, we're accepting PRs at any time for any gaps or suggestions that you think we need to add, especially if you're a reviewer. We also have a non-code guide part to that we've decided to cook up. That meets every Wednesday as a sub-project of contributor experience, and they talk about how to ramp someone onto the project in ways that aren't necessarily related to code. And this is also a really great way to ramp people into code so that they understand the sort of ecosystem elements of the project. Next, we're working on is a developer guide portion to the contributor guide as well. You can see I also did not add the issue link there. Tim Pepper is actually going to be leading this up. Reach out to on Slack if you'd like to help, and his Slack ID is right there. Contributor.kubernetes.io. The URL is not final on this. That's under discussion right now, but I thought it would be nice to show kind of what we're going for. This is going to be a contributor audience only site, which is different from kubernetes.io/community, because community we define as users and contributors. So now we find that our contributor population is large enough to segment its communications, which will also help in the will help with feelings of being inundated with everything that's going on with the project. So we hope that this will help focus contributors on contributor related information. And we'll actually have a more modern calendar as the first feature. And this will include all of your SIG meetings and things along those lines. Things that it won't include are more community-related meetings, which will ultimately go onto the kubernetes.io/community site. You can check out the prototype there. That's without a UI, that's without a skin. George put that up on Hugo recently. And we also have a couple volunteer contributors that are helping with some of the back-end items as well. We're actually hoping to launch the first edition within the next 90 days. The next piece is the community management piece, and this is the piece that really takes up a lot of time because it is highly transactional. And as our community grows into thousands, this is an area that we are constantly having to finesse and constantly having to rework and refigure out things. Because once you reach certain scale, you have to use automation where possible, or else you'll just drive yourself insane. So for the events piece, contributor summits, we recently did one, or actually our first one in Copenhagen. We saw 198 attendees, which was up from Austin's 167. And we had a lot of rave reviews about the new contributor workshop edition that Gwen and Josh did. Thanks to them, we are actually going to be rolling this out and coming up with a new contributor playground, if you will. And that playground will be in the community repo and actually have prow and things like that attached to it, so that new contributors can really play around and get used to the automation and CI that we have. So that was a really good highlight, I thought. So Shanghai, we're actually not going to be doing a full-blown contributor summit for KubeCon there. That's in November. We're only going to be rolling out a new contributor workshop. And Josh is going to be leading that one as well, with some local contributors, as well as some other contributors from around the world. And then also we are now underway planning for Seattle, which is actually going to be extended by a half day, most likely a big social event for the half day as a pre. Registration and everything is actually going to be going through the KubeCon site this time and not a Google form, so we are official. And so look out for all things related to Contributor Summit within the next couple of weeks, and as KubeCon starts to heat up. We also do a la carte events. A lot of other communities offer us space or offer us a contributor track or some kind of session. And we, if we can, we will definitely do that, for instance, like a DockerCon. So the community management piece that's the largest, in my opinion, and I know others would agree, is probably the communication pipelines that we run. As you all know, we do have a lot of spam and things like that. So one of our main priorities right now is to really clean up this area, and not necessarily even for spam, but to reduce the number of pipelines that we have and really strengthen the ones that are working out well for us. So again, a lot of those pain points that you might be feeling now, we hope to, within the next couple of months, really alleviate those concerns that you might have. The mod guides in there right now that you see are our first attempt at mod guides, a general mod guide anyway, again, from a perspective of its umbrella for all of these communication platforms. And then what we intend to do is drill down into each one and really take us out of the process, meaning so you can see what we do as moderators for some of these platforms and just really document each one of those steps. So first things first, we moderate this meeting that we're all on right now. For instance, we have an addition of something called a co-host. And that co-host's responsibility solely is to watch for bad actors, watch for people who are doing things against our code of conduct, and then ultimately remove them and then take other actions. Zoom, this has been probably one of our largest action items that we've had over the last couple of weeks, because we have had a few bad actors on Zoom calls, and also our ecosystem has as well. So we have been locking down Zoom as much as possible without taking away the public nature of the meetings, because obviously that's important in open source. And other resources that we've looked at don't necessarily meet the bar for that public nature. So we've actually created a lot of best practices around moderation of public Zoom meetings, and we're actually working with Zoom executives to really see what we can do and features that can be rolled out from a security perspective that would address our needs. So much more on that soon. If you are a SIG chair and you're listening to this, you have been sent a ton of information on how to properly conduct Zoom calls. Please read that. There was a lot that we could not do from a global perspective that individual users will have to do. So please read those guidelines carefully. We're also doing the mailing lists, KDev, K-users now, which is new for us. The moderation team is pretty much the same team as it is across the board. You can actually get to us very rapidly with Slack, and we're in there with, under the Slack admins channel. Even though it might not be a Slack issue, it's just a way for if you need to get a hold of us as quick as possible. That could be a very good way. If, for instance, if you do see spam on KDev and K users, and we do ask the community to help us community moderate. So if you see something that isn't right, please call it out. We're all humans and unfortunately cannot read emails all day long. We are going to look into like automation and bots and things like that that could help us with these things, but that's not necessarily on the agenda at this point. Slack is huge for us. We now have over 40,000 members and growing rapidly with 170 channels. And it's a great source for us. It's actually very low moderation compared to other mailing lists that see, at least 12 spammers a day, I would say on average. So Slack, we're only doing, I'd say maybe like 1 to 2 at most moderation type activities a week there. And then discuss.kubernetes.io, that's a cap that we recently put in, and George and Bob Killian and many others have been putting a moderation team around this platform. This platform is an open source platform that will give us really great SEO, especially on user topics. And we're seeing that the user topics are really, really taking off. And it's a great kind of introduction to user stories or user tutorials and things along those lines, where we don't necessarily have that on any of other communication pipelines, and like tips and tricks that users are kind of sharing that you don't necessarily get from our docs. Which has been a really interesting process to kind of see get laid out. I think we have over 900 members at this point, and that's also growing rapidly as well. We are now officially going to go forward with it as a supported project. We recently did a mailing list item for that this week, so we're just waiting for some +1s and/or objections for that. And then, of course, the redesign of kubernetes.io/community. It's underway. Updates and decisions are going to happen in SIG docs and ours. Please feel free on the issue link there to add comments and suggestions. This is going to house a general calendar minus SIG updates and other really cool modern additions like embedded office hours on YouTube and things along those lines. Mentoring, we are doing really well with Meet Our Contributors. That is a scalable solution when mentors don't have time to take on someone at a one-on-one. We do it once a month. Yesterday's was a special edition. We actually had steering committee members on, and that was super fun. Lots of like, what's a sub-project question. So definitely feel free to check that out when you can. Outreachy, we do participate in Outreachy. Unfortunately, it's only twice a year. So the September deadline for the winter intern is coming up. If you are out there and would like to one-on-one an underrepresented individual, which is awesome, very rewarding, and it's cool to just kind of do that. CNCF actually has offered to pay for one, and supporting companies are more than welcome to fund more. Google, for instance, paid for one last time, and it works out really, really well. Group mentoring in the one-on-one hour, they're still in development. The tests have ran and need to do some process improvements and automation before we actually do a full launch. If anybody's interested in those concepts, I don't have time to explain them right now in great detail. But if you're interested in kind of new creative solutions around mentoring at scale, these cover that. So if you are in a SIG that needs new members, not necessarily new contributors, but new members of a different level, so more approvers, for instance, please see me so that we can try to carry out one of these to see if it meets your needs. And then, of course, Google Summer of Code is underway. We do have one, and he is under API Machinery. Shouts to those 3 individuals, Nikita, Stefan, David, for their help with that. And his work is actually included in the link right there. And I think that's it. All right. I did way more than 10 minutes, but we have a lot going on, and this is not all of it either. So, any questions about contributor experience? No? All right.
I'll remark that we also have ongoing, in the GitHub department, we also have ongoing work to do things like normalize labels.
Yeah. And issue triage, issue hygiene. I actually wrote all these down on a pad, but I just knew that it was going to be much longer than 10 minutes. But all of this is very relevant to this call for contributors that are on this call. So, all right. And Josh, thanks for all of your work with contributor experience. All right. Next, let's move on to the announcements part of the call. Shout outs. This is our weekly shout out to cool contributors who are doing something great for either you or the project itself. If you have someone, please enter them in the shout outs in the Slack channel, and we'll read them off here every week. First things first, Josh is shouting out Jace for inventing and running really effective retros for releases. Yes, that's awesome. I've even seen quite a few SIGs take up independent retros like CLI, apps, etc. And that's a great way to get things moving for your SIGs. And then the next 2 are from me, from a ton of people yesterday who participated in 2 different Meter contributor sessions where they took questions from Slack and some other sources about contributor related issues. So Jordan, Steve, James for the first session, and then the next session with Aaron and Janet. And then, of course, our steering committee members, Brendan, Brandon, and Phil, for taking the time out to do that. It was a really, really cool time and experience. Thank you. And then the next shout out, it looks like I didn't copy over the face, but I think this is from James. James is shouting out Steve, again, for immediately jumping to spend time debugging and fixing issues with our Proud deployment, and Tide not merging our PRs. Looking forward to rolling out the fix. It has caused issues for us for 1 to 2 months now. So congrats to Steve for helping out that crew. Office hours is next Wednesday. Volunteers to help answer questions are always appreciated. Ping those 2 individuals that are listed there if you want to help. Otherwise, help us spread the word on social media channels and other channels. And then just a quick message that next week's meeting will not be streamed, so expect a slight delay on publishing it to YouTube. So just take note that if you are watching this from the stream right now, that next week's will only be live via Zoom, and then you'll have to watch the recording most likely Friday. All right, and then that wraps up today's meeting, unless anyone has any other questions, concerns, comments. All right, that's it, 15 minutes early. And have a wonderful Thursday, everyone. Bye, everybody.